let's talk a little bit about the way you go about selecting plays for a season or shows, including musicals.
Sure. So something that is unique this process is that I started in June, whereas what I hope through the future is that programming is actually a year-round activity. And it was sort of the same thing at the Thousands Playhouse. My first season I programmed within a few months, and then I started switching so that it was more of an annual activity and we were making decisions as we went, so there wasn't a huge crunch as we go to the end. There's always a crunch for some reason. Things change at the last minute. But in an attempt to keep things stable and moving forward. So what I like to do is read as many plays as possible, as Bill knows. He kept on being like, you don't have to read all the plays this time. There will be other seasons that you're programming. But I feel compelled to read as many or see as many or watch as many archival tapes as possible. And I create long lists of shows that I'm just interested in just because they've sparked something in me, not for any specific reason, except that I like them. That's it. I like them on this long list. Then once I have a long list and I've gotten through the plays that I want to reread or read or people have suggested to me, I then start reading that long list again and I start making shorter lists. And at that point, I start thinking more about it from a programmatic perspective. What space I think that they would work in, what time of year I think they would work in, their scope and scale, because you want to be thinking about there's some big shows you want to do and you want to balance those with smaller shows because of budgetary reasons and also human resources reasons, and also because of an interest in expressing different forms of theater. And so then as those short lists are getting smaller and smaller as I'm thinking about those things, I'm also starting to think about this phrase that I shared with Bill that I love, which is sort of grant writing speak, but I love it, conscious eclecticism. So trying to find a variety of kinds of work that all bounce off each other and spark across each other. So when I'm programming a season, I don't usually think of a theme. I actually try to think of like a bunch of shows that are all a little bit different than each other. And then once I have that shorter list, then we start the budgeting process. And that's where there's usually some heartbreak involved because you have to let some of your babies go. But that's a smart and prudent and important part of the process.
You're talking about programming and you're very close to announcing the season. But you did have some specific ideas of what you wanted to accomplish. Can you talk about some of those? Like when you sat down and thought, I want to do this, that, and the other, what did you focus on first?
Yeah, I have it. I don't know if I can be able to remember all of them off the top of my head, but I have sort of those 8 artistic goals that I wrote about for the Canada Council for a grant that I was given the opportunity by the Canada Council to add to our grant, and what were my artistic dreams. And so I remember the first one that I wrote about was celebrating and encouraging and strengthening what already exists here, which is the belief in local artists and local voices. And so I thought about different ways about proceeding to continue to do that. Also, because one of the things that excited me so much about the Arts Club was its new play development programming, which, because I started as a baby at the Tarragon Theatre, where that's all they do really, the central idea of what they do, that was really important to me, so that included, is also one of my artistic goals. Diversity and inclusion is a really important part of what I'm looking forward into the future. Education and outreach and how to develop stronger ties with the community, whether it's professional development training for artists in the community or whether it's deeper connections to the community at large through partnering with other institutions here in the Lower Mainland. And that reminds me, another big part of my goals is partnering with institutions. And so right from small emerging companies, we want to have resident companies at the Arts Club. And I think we will be starting next season with that, right to collaborating with the large institutions here in the city itself, like, for example, maybe the Gallery or the Opera in the future, as well as theatre companies across Canada.
Terrific. So it's probably time for you to give us a little sneak peek of next season.
Great.
What would you like to tell these wonderful people? And of course, you are sworn to secrecy.
We'll start with the Stanley. The big musical that we're going to be doing next year is Matilda, which is based on Roald Dahl's novel, and it's about a precocious 5-year-old who has telekinetic abilities. Has anyone here seen Matilda on Broadway or the West End? Yeah, so there's been one very successful production that started on the West End, and then it went to Broadway, and it's been touring North America, and it's been a big dream of mine to do that here, right from when I first applied for the job last February, March, yeah. It was part of my pitch to the board. At that point, the rights weren't available, so it's been a lot of emailing with MTI over the fall, and the rights have just become available. So I think our production is going to be the first one post this West End Broadway production.
So Granville Island.
Great. So on Granville Island, when I first landed at the Arts Club, I was reading an article about the most produced American playwright, who's a woman named Lauren Gunderson, who's 34, 35. And I'd never heard of her, and I thought, who is this person? So I started doing a bit of investigation, and she's written a lot of plays. And the play that we are going to do is called Miss Bennet, Christmas at Pemberley. And it is a sequel to Pride and Prejudice. Ooh, that's going to be here. I know. And it's about Mary Bennet, who's the middle sister, who's quite bookish, and in Pride and Prejudice, there's not a lot about Mary. She's sort of overlooked. And so Lauren has imagined what her life is like. And it's set at Christmas time, Christmas at Pemberley. And in it, Mary Bennet has an unexpected romance and starts to see her life in a new way. Remember when I first read it, I was like, Bill, I think I found the Granville Island Christmas show. So I'm very, very excited. It's like a classic piece. Like it's period, and it's delightful and funny, and it also has a modern sensibility to it, as it's written by a young woman right now who's living and working in the United States.
And there's one remount?
And there is a remount, which is going to be Mum's the Word here in the summer. Yay! Which also in my first week, once I arrived here, April, who's the tour manager, and I took the SkyTrain out to Burnaby and saw the show there, and I just thought it was so funny, and those women are so fantastic, and so I'm excited that will be our summer show.
And the Goldcorp stage?
So the Goldcorp stage, the show that we're going to do is called Blind Date. It's by Rebecca Northern. Yes, maybe it was been done at the Cultch once before for a short run, so that yes might have been someone who saw it there. It's a great play that I've been a huge fan of since it first started its development in 2007, and actually I brought it to Gananoque a couple years ago. In it, a woman who's dressed in a lovely dress but happens to have a clown nose on, so she's also a clown, is waiting for her date and is stood up. And what ends up happening is that she invites a member of the audience to come up on stage with her, and they go on a first date. Yeah, I can see like everyone right now is like, oh, I don't want to be that person. I promise you that before the play starts, there's actually a mingle in the lobby where Mimi, the clown, and her compatriots chat with people and interview them and find out who would be comfortable doing this. And then that person actually finds out once the show starts if they're doing it or not. It's a form, Rebecca calls it spontaneous theater, so it's a combination of improvisation and some like clown work, I guess, and sort of fly by the seat of your pants theater. But really what it is a conversation with this gentleman where the Mimi does a superb job interviewing him and finds out really about his life. And in most cases, I've seen it many times now, you find out about his personal life as well. And every time you see it, you fall in love with this person that is on a date with Mimi.